Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we are chatting with Mondo Davis, a board game designer who signed his first game in 2016 and has since signed 5 additional games with various publishers, including Colorfield and Mansplaining. Mondo, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. You and I haven't, this is the first time we're meeting. We haven't met before, but I did come across you on your TikTok channel, of all places. And you're saying just before we went on air, that's been an avenue where a lot of people have started approaching you recently.
Yeah, it's been fun. I think I got into TikTok probably relatively early for a lot of board game kind of stuff. So I've been able to, we were talking about the growth, which has been fun, but also just having it's kind of an open frontier, and I think it still is, especially for designers being on there, like just having really easy access to publishers and to people that are in the industry. So I've seen a lot of relationships develop, out of the time I spent on there, just in the short time I've been on there. So it's been really fun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when I follow TikTok content and creation advice, right? And there's tons of, even on TikTok, there's tons of advice on how to create TikToks and how to build a channel. Yeah. And a lot of people say niche, so niche down, right?
Yeah.
And the other is provide something like learning or educational kind of content or something that people might learn from. And certainly, I think you're closing in on 10,000 followers, which I think is awesome. Not quite there yet, but you're almost there. And when I look at your content, and this is what caught me, and I've been following you for now, I'd say probably at least 3-4 months. When I first came across your content, and that's, like everybody in the board game industry on TikTok, you just start following every game designer.
Yeah,
anybody's doing anything board game related, you just start following them, right?
Yeah.
And so I followed you. So now you come into my feed, and you provide advice. And the one that hooked me was you were providing advice on software that every game designer should be using. Right. And I think the one was actually Wombo, and I hadn't heard of it. And you're talking about it. I'm like, whoa, what's that? So I went on my phone really quickly, looked it up. I'm like, this is the greatest thing ever. How did I not know this before?
Yeah.
Right? I can use this to create cards. And we're working on a game right now where we need like a mock-up kind of face cover of our game box. And it's a bit abstract and so forth. And I use that app, and I actually created through their AI software something that would be a great stand-in until I actually hire an artist to do that for me. So
yeah.
There you are providing advice. I'm on the receiving end. Take the advice, and it's actually enhanced my creative process, quite frankly, as a game designer. So that's an example of how niching down might not get the hundreds of thousands of followers right away, but certainly I think the quality of the followers that you get is kind of what you're looking for, right? Because you can have that engagement with your audience, which I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad it was helpful for you for sure. But I think that's kind of been my focus the whole time. When I started designing, I had no idea what I was doing, and was able to reached out to a lot of other designers that were established and knew what they were doing, and got just so much help and advice and answers to my questions. And it was like any success I've had, is directly because of the help that I got early on. So when I was kind of getting into TikTok just as a consumer, I was like, I really like this platform.
Yeah, it's cool.
But nobody on this platform is doing board game design stuff. John Brigger was kind of the only guy that was, and I as a way to sort of pay back like all of the time and help that I got as a new designer, I figured like it'd be fun to get on there, just do like very basic kind of introductory. You want to design a game, but you don't really know how to start, or you don't know what to do once you've play tested a few times or something like that. With that in mind, like it's been cool to connect with people and to be able to sort of provide that service for folks to get started.
Yeah, it's awesome. And in this whole kind of idea of paying it forward, right? And even Jamie Stagmeyer's of the world, right? He is constantly paying it forward, and he's appreciative of all the fan base that he has. He's still one of
Mm.
the most humble people I can even think of in this industry.
Yeah.
But he's constantly paying it forward, right? He's saying, I was successful, I continue to be successful, and I want you to be successful too. So here's some advice. And if you go to, again, I plug this all the time, but if you go to the Stonemeyer Games website, he's got a blog you can follow. He literally has a paint by kind of map for you on how to take a game to market and how to do Kickstarters and things like this, how to build a following. And I think that the smart designers out there or the smart developers try to consume as much content as they can from the community, right? And continue to learn. Like every day I'm stuff.
Yeah.
That thirst for knowledge, which on top of creating games, which is kind of the bug that kind of bites us all, I think it's that wanting to constantly learn that kind of drives us as well. Is that with you as well, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm constantly listening to podcasts or to, watching
Yeah.
videos on YouTube or whatever. I think that I mean, especially as like an independent designer, that I've been doing it for 5 years, which, in the grand scheme of things isn't that much.
Yeah, that's not long.
But right, yeah. So I'm very aware of how much better I could be and how much better other people are at it. So
Yeah.
like the opportunities that are out there, and I think that's something I love about the community is there's so many opportunities and resources for people to go and learn more. And like people, designers like Jamie's a great example that are just like, hey, what do you want to know? Like, I'm going to tell you absolutely everything you want to know, and you can grow and develop as a designer. So, I mean, the thirst for that is great, and I think that was something that drew me again to kind of creating the channel. Was just being able to use whatever experience I've had, which again is not that much, but it's enough. I think that I wanted to share it, and I wanted to give people a chance to learn and to grow, and ask questions and get questions answered, and hear
Yeah.
stories and all that.
So 5 years isn't that long. I've been doing it roughly even less, I think, than you. I think I started in like 2017.
hmm
And I think all of us, we say, we started, and I'll put that in quotation marks, because was polished, right? For many of us, the design process and the tinkering and stuff like that went for many years prior. But for you, what were you doing? What was kind of were you working somewhere before you did this, or are you still like, what's kind of your background?
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a teacher actually. That's
Oh,
my
cool.
day job. And I've been in teaching for about 12 years in different levels of education. But
Yeah.
I actually so I did started designing 5 years ago. I
Oh, really?
actually
Wow.
didn't. Yeah, I think so. My first title was actually signed in 2019, so just 3 years ago.
Okay.
Um, but I actually had I mean, I kind of came in through the back door of design. Like I was not familiar or aware of the hobby game world, community
Yep.
culture at all. But I had an idea for making. Uh, there's this old available on an Mac OS system when I was a kid called Escape Velocity, which was my favorite computer game.
Yeah.
But it was essentially you couldn't play it anymore because it wasn't it was never updated, it was never re-released. So I was kind of lamenting the fact that I couldn't play that game because I just
Yeah.
had great experiences playing as a kid, and was thinking to myself like, it'd be cool if somebody made a board game about that, since it's otherwise dead. And so I figured I'd take a shot. So I started designing this game again, not knowing anything about board games or that they even existed, to the degree that they do.
Yeah.
And from there, just got into the industry that way, like got into the hobby that way as a designer, trying to figure out how to make a board game. But yeah,
And then this
so
first game, so did that game actually make it to publish at all, or
no,
do you just
no.
kind of create it to say, I want to create an analog or a tactile version of this video game classic that I know?
Yeah, I mean that was what I started. And I made a mistake that a lot of designers make early on, is I only play tested it with friends and family.
Yeah.
And I play tested with a good number of friends and family, and the feedback that I got was just overwhelmingly positive.
This is the best thing
Not
ever.
because yeah, exactly, not because the game was good, but because they were impressed that I made a board game.
Yeah.
So I internalized that as the game is really good, because all these people that play it love it. So I actually went and took that game to publishers, in like went to a few cons in 2016, pitching that game. And the game was really bad. I mean, it was a terrible game. But I've since like tried to go back and see if I can salvage it, and it's just like, no, there's nothing here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that experience though of like, learning that process of contacting publishers and setting up meetings and putting together pitch and videos and sell sheets and all that stuff, was just kind of this trial by fire that I went through because I thought I had this game that was like really, really great. And then once that it was kind of explained to me that that game wasn't good, and I was able to really see that, I just had fallen in love with the process and
How did you
haven't
take
quit.
that feedback? Because again, the first time you start getting feedback on your creation, it's tough not to take it personally, right? Because
Oh yeah,
creating
yeah.
something is very, very personal. It's like writing a song. If you wrote a song and then you said, "Hey, people, what do you think of this?" and then they shred it,
Mm,
I mean, you would take that quite personally. Or painting. Say you did a painting, right? And you're an
yeah.
artist, and you said, "Hey, what do you think of this painting?" And people are like, I don't think you did this, and you should have done it this way. It's a
Hmm.
very, very personal thing. So how did you find it the first time when you had to kind of manage that and and take
Yeah.
that feedback?
Yeah, I mean, I think that honestly, I didn't really get v- hard critical feedback for a long time for that game.
Yeah,
The publishers that I showed it to, I mean, they were very direct, but they're also very kind. Like
yeah,
they have to let a lot of people down, so usually they're pretty good at that. Because they get pitched so many games by designers, and they don't sign most of them. So,
yeah,
uh, I kind of walked away from those meetings thinking like, okay, like probably should change some things and see if I can take some of those ideas that they had and implement. But it wasn't like this game is bad. That wasn't the feedback that I was getting, and that wasn't until I was out in traveling through Europe with my wife, and I had connected online with Jeffrey Allers, who is a designer that did a game called New York Slice and Gunky Mono, and
hmm,
he's done several, but uh, basically he ended up inviting me to his like designer meetup in Berlin. So
oh
he's
wow,
an American that lives in Germany, but then all of his design group, his friends are all German, and they're all published designers from Germany. So I brought my game and I sat down and I played it, and they were just so German with their feedback. I mean, very direct, very critical. Like, no, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. And luckily, at that point, I had kind of been around the process enough to understand,
yeah,
like, okay, these guys know what they're talking about.
yeah,
So if they say it's bad, it's probably bad. So I was able to receive that feedback, in a way that I could hear it and that I didn't take it personally because I knew I had, again, been around designers enough to figure out, like, all right, these people aren't trying to hurt my feelings. They're just being honest, and honesty is what I need. So yeah, I always recommend if you ever get a chance to play test with designers, it's great because I think designers are really good at giving very targeted and direct feedback and not worrying about your feelings, uh,
they cut to it,
especially if
eh?
they're German.
Yeah, for me, I find the biggest challenge when getting feedback from people sometimes is cutting through the feedback to improve upon what I have versus the feedback of them trying to turn into a game that they want.
Oh yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying? And I
yeah,
encountered
yeah,
that a lot on a couple of my games where I'm taking the feedback right, and then also I'm realizing, wait a second, they're just trying to turn this into a completely different game. And really, what I was
sure.
looking for feedback on was, is this mechanic working, or thematically does this thing fit? And I think sometimes it's important to set that expectation up front to say, here's kind of the sandbox of feedback that I'm looking for from you, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and
Yeah.
I've had that, and I've had, uh, I've had a reviewer once say, "Well, I'm not going to give you any feedback if you're going to constrain me." And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine," but I'm not. I'm not. We're at a stage right now where we're doing the final polishing, right? Because we're close to going live. I want to make sure nothing's broken here, but I'm not looking to
Mm,
turn this into a different game, or I'm not
sure.
looking to switch the core mechanic into a different mechanic. There's a reason why we picked a specific core mechanic, right? So, it's a little bit of a nuanced dance I find sometimes with the feedback. But I agree from designers. Gosh, I was in Protospiel, Toronto, and I didn't bring a game, but I was there just to play test and play other people's games. And
Hmm.
you know, I was always a little bit of pensive about giving feedback myself because I don't want to be overly critical. And I want to encourage people to create their own games. And
Yeah,
I
of
remember I
course.
was at this one table we're playing, and we're I think on like round two, and then somebody just goes, you know, time out. I think I've played enough to give you my feedback. Like
Yeah.
the game's done. I'm going to give you my
Yeah.
feedback. We're not going to complete this game. I'm going to give you the feedback right now.
Right.
And it was a bit of a shorthand that kind of it was a little bit jarring for me, but for everyone else at the table, they're like, oh yeah, okay, good, yeah, I think we got enough to give our feedback too. And the person's like, okay, great. And when I step back from that, I'm like, okay, well, the person whose game it was, they want to get feedback from as many people as possible, right? So if they can get feedback from people halfway into the game, then get some other people at the table, that's cool. They don't have to finish that game. It's
Yeah,
actually probably
for
better that
sure.
they don't finish it and get on to the next group. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know, it's still kind of a bit of a learning process, but it certainly has been kind of a bit of a wake up call. But that's usually what I you know, caution, especially new designers, that try not to take it personally. It's very hard not to take it personally, but try not to take it personally.
Yeah.
And
And I think that comes with time. I mean, I think the
yeah,
more, I'm at a point where every game that I design, the question is this going to be licensed by a publisher? Like, is this
mm,
the start of something that's going to be good enough to publish? Because I'm not publishing my own games. I'm not really
yeah,
interested in self-publishing just personally.
yep,
Um, so it's like, yeah, I mean, if I play test a game and there's nothing there, like I want to know that up front. You know, if there's not
yeah,
something that the players are connecting to that's interesting, that has potential to be really good, um, I want to scrap it and move on to the next design, because I have limited, I don't do this full time, so I have limited creative
yeah.
time to design, and I do want the outcome of my time to be productive in that
Sure.
sense.
And in that case,
So
then when you
it's
scrap
extremely
it, are you
helpful.
scrapping it like full scrap, or do you try to like salvage the theme and rework the theme into something else, or how does that work?
I mean, it depends. I mean, my process is very mechanical. I
Mm,
almost always start with mechanisms, with what you do, how you play, like the turn
mm,
mechanics, what you're doing on your turn,
yep.
more so than theme, because I've found that I can create stronger games, better games, if I have really good game mechanics and mechanisms in the game, and then find a theme that fits those mechanics. So
Mm,
typically, if I'm playtesting in an early stage, there's not going to be much to it besides that mechanic that I'm testing out,
sure.
and I maybe build some things around it. Um, and if that mechanic doesn't work, for example, like if I have some kind of draft system, or like, I've done this has happened before. We've got a game where cards are on the table and there's a specific way that you're supposed to pick them up. Then I'm thinking like this might be an interesting choice. Which cards you pick up into your hand to play for points or whatever. And after that, people playing it are like, I asked that question. I was like, was that draft interesting? And they say, well, it was okay. Like if that's the answer they get, and that's all the game, like that's what's good about the game in my mind,
Yeah.
and it doesn't get a strong reaction, then like, okay, maybe it's not that good. If again, if there's something there that I need to kind of flesh out, then then I'll flesh it out. But if
Hmm.
there's not a lot of places for it to go, then it's like, okay, well, that's fine. I'll just move on to the next one, and keep that moving, because like that's this again, the success that I've had getting games signed is just having a lot of games kind of polished and ready, because I'm only focusing my time on games that have that potential.
So let's talk
Um,
about that. I'm showing your website, and we'll get into the games you've published in a minute. But I mean, if you just look at your current website, you've got your sell sheets up there for like you're ready to sell, right? You've got design publishers can go to your site, and you have your a la carte choices, right? There's I think I'm counting 10 games up there right now. Um, you know, where people can see exactly, okay, here's the gist of how the game's played and so forth. So certainly it's clear that content and an amount of or quantity seems to be something that you want to kind of get a number of different concepts and game ideas out there to
mhm.
increase your odds of being picked up. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's so many different markets within the board game industry, and so
Mm-hmm.
many different publishers that are trying to appeal those markets. Um, I mean, I make a lot of games because I make a lot of games, because I spend a lot of my free time working on it, and
Yeah.
I have a nice network of people that can play test and kind of support through that. Um, so I don't know that I make a lot of games in like on purpose. It's just like what I've, just kind of
Mm-hmm.
what happens when I spend the time that I spend on it.
Yeah.
But I do think that having a portfolio of games it just really helps your chances because I'll go to a con and I have a literal portfolio folder that I'll sit down with a publisher if I get a meeting and I'll just flip through it. I'll go through all 10 of my sell sheets and I'll just do a quick little thing like here's this
Mm-hmm.
game, go to the next one, go to the next one, and then if they say, okay, this one looked interesting, this one looked interesting, go back and tell me more, or do you have this? Can we set it up? Can we see it?
Yeah.
That's what publishers are looking for. Like they just want a quick idea of what you got, and if they see something that's interesting, then they want to see more. So having that available, like having some options to choose from, I think is again something that takes a lot of time. Like it takes a lot of time to get there,
Yeah.
a lot of design time, but it's also something that's just tremendously beneficial for getting published and getting games published.
So when you're doing that, when you're doing these conventions and you're talking to publishers, are you literally bringing like a traveling case with you that has like copies, like playable copies of each of the games, or how does that work?
Yeah, so I usually have prototypes of anything that I think is likely to get
Like,
looked at
yeah.
in more detail. That's typically either in a very like I get it down to a very small box. I don't make big strategic 3-4 hour games. That's just not what I design.
Yep.
So I do have the luxury of like being able to fit my prototypes into my backpack and carry them around. So I'll usually have like 6 or 7 of the prototypes just with me.
Yeah.
So if the publisher wants to take them home or if they want to like maybe find another time during the con to play it or something like that, I've got it. So that's part of the part of the package is having all those ready to go,
I
which
guess
is a lot of work.
for people that are pitching their own games, the importance of having a sell sheet is key.
Mm-hmm.
I know Joe Slack from the Board Game Designers course, he has some templates even for people if they don't know how to kind of create that. But having kind of your one pager, and quite frankly, even if you're a self publisher and you're looking for distributors to carry your game, you still need to have these one pagers that kind of quickly, cleanly explain what the game is, the core mechanics, number of players, play time, thematic, and then the gist of what the game is about. When I look at someone that's kind of doing this and they're in as deeply and as methodically as you are, it doesn't shock me when I see that. Is it like 5 games I think you've had published in like 2 years or picked up, signed? Like that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got 5 under contract, yeah, and then
Yeah, congratulations. Like
possibly
just
another
pause there
contract
for a
coming
second.
soon.
That's in 2 years, five signed, man.
Thanks.
That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it has so much more to do with networking
Sure.
and getting to know people.
Yeah.
That's where, I mean, every game that I've signed has come out of a relationship that I had with somebody in the industry, whether that's a publisher or a designer that worked with a publisher or whatever. So I think that's my advice for that. Like for how I've been able to do that is
Yeah.
just like getting involved in the community, whether it's online or if you're able to go to conventions or locally, finding other designers or people wherever you are, and just connecting and meeting up and like being friends and getting to know each other, and then like things can grow out of that.
Yeah.
And that's been my story. So thank you.
Yeah, no, and
Yeah.
and I think it even goes beyond game design, right? I think any part of this industry at all, if somebody wants to get into this industry, if they want to help with rule book writing, or if they want to help with play testing, or if they want to help with marketing, even any way you want to get involved in this industry, the easiest way to do that is exactly what you're saying, is to network, right? Meet as many
Mhm.
people as you can, reach out. This is one of the most welcoming, warmest industries on the planet.
Yeah.
People are more than happy to talk to you. People are more than happy to give you their time. Everybody wants to pay it forward. You and I were talking about this earlier. Everybody wants to pay it forward. And so sometimes it's just asking, right? Like,
Yeah.
if and I've talked to people that have even been playtesters that say, hey, I just reached out to a publisher and said, hey, do you need another playtester? I'd love to be on your list. Right?
Yeah.
And I've seen people
Yeah.
saying, hey, you need help with social media? I've got a couple things I can do to help promote. And then that can grow into something in the industry. So it's kind of cool
Yeah,
with LinkedIn.
I think that because it's such a small industry, I think
Yeah.
that that's more true, like you're saying, than for any other industry. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, the access that a a gamer, just not a designer, not a no, someone that doesn't work in the industry, the access that they have to publishers and to designers, and to, to these kind of like influential people in the industry
Yeah.
is it's just like wide open. I mean, you can I've done that, like especially early on,
Yeah.
just send emails to designers, famous designers, Richard Garfield and people like that, and like gotten responses and people, ready and willing and accessible, because they want to help and they like love the hobby and love to see it grow and love to support people. So
Yeah.
absolutely,
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask about your most recent game, Mansplaining.
yeah, of course.
Has this caused any, like, I think I saw one of your TikToks, you're like, sometimes people, I see the name and they just react, right?
Yeah, yeah.
What
It's funny, yeah.
What's this game
Go
about?
ahead.
Like, give me the gist of what this game is.
So it's a party game. I like to describe it as reverse taboo. So one
Okay.
one player is the mansplainer for the round, and they have a card that has a topic, something like how to mow the lawn or how to do laundry or something like that, and they have to mansplain that topic to the group, but then they also have four cards that have detail words, which are just unrelated, like kind of more obscure words that they
Hmm.
have to sneak into their mansplanation. So they're trying to say those words without those words being identified by the people that are listening. So it's a fun because it's like you have to have a very verbose explanation to fit the word Renaissance into an explanation about how to make a taco or something. You know what I mean?
So we've got one I'm on the Board Game Geek website here where it's got
Okay.
how to garden as a topic, and in the details you got existential, burrow, bloom, and carpet. So you got to work with those four words into
Right
how to
into
garden.
an explanation of how to garden. But
Oh, that's awesome. And then
yeah, it's
how's the
funny. So
score? Like, how do you win? Like, what's the like the scoring kind of mechanism there then?
yeah, so if you're in the audience listening, you're going to write down guesses about what those words are and what the topic was, and if you get those correct, then you get a point. And then if you're mansplaining, there's a Dixit scoring system. So if everybody or if somebody but not everybody guesses your topic
Okay,
correctly,
yeah.
then you get a point, and then you also get points for just using the words. So as long as you have those words in there, then you get a point for them. So yeah, you just kind of go around, so everybody gets to do it twice, and then you add up the scores.
Oh, that's awesome. I love the name. At the
Yeah,
very
yeah,
least, that's
it's
gonna get people to stop and say, What's this?"
right, right. Well, and I mean, we're really excited about it. I mean, I think it has potential to do, to have a pretty wide reach, which is exciting. But it has definitely been interesting to participate in the conversations around
Yeah, no kidding.
mansplaining. I co-designed the game with Fortessa Elise, who is a designer that is a friend of mine, and she's excellent.
Yeah.
And we just kind of always text each other back and forth about comments that are left on the BGG page about how the name is so sexist and offensive and all this. And it's great because it's like this kind of like controversy that's going to drive
Oh yeah.
traffic to the game. Like for
Yeah.
us, we're like, all right, yeah, bring it. And it's also been fun to see, like you said, yeah. So I posted something like that on TikTok, and people are just coming out in support of us and really like throwing themselves behind kind of what we're doing in the face of this sort of internet troll situation that's been developing. I mean, it'll probably keep going and
Oh
get
yeah.
worse and worse. But
Yeah, there's a lot of trolls. I would say though, this is one of the industries with the probably least amount of trolls I've seen, although they do exist, and it's unfortunate. But what's your main tool for game design? Are you more of a kind of scissors, paper, pencil crowns kind of guy? Or are you like a tabletop simulator kind of designer?
yeah, I mean, pre-pandemic, I was all, yeah, paper and um, scissors and stuff.
Yeah.
I During the pandemic, I didn't make a single physical prototype probably for at least like a year and a half.
Yeah.
And four of the games that I signed, no, I'm sorry, three of the games that I signed were never played physically
Wow.
before they were signed. I mean, I had a prototype myself maybe and like did it, but I had when I
Hmm.
pitched it to publishers and when I did the most of the playtesting, it was all online. So I was pretty grateful for that. And now that people are getting back together again, I've started making physical prototypes again. So I think I prefer the actual tactile physical
Yeah.
prototype. But the ease of access that playtesting online grants is just like really great. So I've taken advantage of that and probably will continue to some
That's the
degree.
challenge, I think. I'm working on a game right now with my design partner and brother. And this one we did like printing, cutting out, getting physical pieces from the game crafter to use as our components. It's a heavy enough game that we really want to work out the tactile in-person kind of feel first.
Yeah.
And I think once we're almost there, but once that's polished, then we'll go tabletop simulator and use that as a way to digitally then play with people around the world and get their thoughts and feelings and advice. So
yeah, I feel like it's a great tool.
So for other designers out there, or people who just love following board games and listening to game design advice, how do they follow you? What are your channels? How do people kind of follow your journey?
Yeah, so I mean, primarily I'm on TikTok, like we talked about. So if first of all, I just want to plug that, like designers on TikTok is a wide open frontier. If getting on YouTube or getting on Twitter or getting on Facebook, trying to create content about design specifically, it's just really saturated on those other platforms, but it is absolutely not saturated on TikTok.
What's your TikTok channel? What's your channel name?
Games by Mondo is the handle. So no
Games
spaces.
by Mondo is a handle.
Games
so
by
if people want
Mondo.
to follow you, they go to Games by Mondo. If they want to follow me, they can go to @TinRobotGames. And I know on your website, I think your website. Let me get the.
The website's mondodavis.com.
Mondodavis.com. Awesome.
Yeah.
And are those the two primary channels you're using right now to kind of showcase your stuff?
Yeah. That's, if you want to find me, that's where you can find me. You can also, we didn't talk about Color Field, which is my game coming up with 25th Century Games, but if you follow 25th Century Games or Breaking Games for Mansplaining, those are kind of the two. That's where the updates are going to come from about those titles, which hopefully will be coming out within the next, before the end of the year.
And just very quickly, are these going straight to retail, or are these going on Kickstarter?
The plan right now is for Color Field to go straight to retail, hopefully maybe like at the end of the summer or in the fall.
Yep.
And then Mansplaining, they're still kind of ironing out what route they want to take. So it's looking like that will be a Kickstarter project that will drop at some point in the second half of the year. But yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, Mondo, congrats again, man, on all your success so far. I'm going to keep watching, keep following, and see what else you have to come. I want to wish you all the best in 2022.
Yeah, of course.
You take care.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply subscribe to our YouTube channel, Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.